sub8 theory is too quickly dismissed by a majority of the people who are just getting their feet wet in the black pill community. I like to call those folks gray pillars. While at the same time, people who are deep into the black pill, more genetic determinists, people who've been deep in it for a long time, are often too quick to accept it at face value. And I think by simply renaming it from sub8 theory to discrepancy theory, a lot of the nuance can be recognized while it not being completely detrimental to most people who accept it. So at face value, when a regular person or a gray pillar hears sub8 theory, they're quick to dismiss it because evidently it's not physically the case at all. It's not the situation where there's an outlier here and there that happens to get into a relationship that isn't an 8. It's very obvious that at face value, it's not true. And consequently, a lot of them just immediately dismiss it without acknowledging the nuance of what sub8 theory really implies. And it's not that if you're sub8, you're not going to be able to attain any desire or any relationship at all. What sub8 theory is trying to articulate is that if you are not 8 or close to 8, Chad level, well then, yes, you can attain a relationship. Yes, you can attain the girl, but she's not going to desire you the same way she would an 8, a Chad, and perhaps some way into your relationship, whether it's a couple months in or a year in, depending how long your honeymoon phase lasts, then eventually she's going to start desiring 8s, the ones she sees on social media, Chads. Now, that's the nuance of it, and consequently, I think it would be a lot better off renaming it to discrepancy theory, because this way the nuance of it could be acknowledged and it not be completely dismissed, because what it really comes down to is not whether or not you're an 8. What it actually comes down to is the discrepancy in SMVs. If she's shooting high enough above her SMV, not directly to her looks match, but if she's shooting well above her genetic material value, that desire is going to be very long lasting. And I talked about a lot of the nuance of this in the video on my main channel, The Science Why Females Cheat. And it has a lot to do with them feeling overly secure in a relationship, and so consequently they start opening up their options. It's not in their control, it's completely out of their control. It's just biological hardwiring. It's like, okay, I've secured the resources here for sure. This man is attached to me emotionally. And when you're attached emotionally, even if you are physically, and the facts are that you are 2 to 3 notches higher in SMV, if you do get emotionally attached, and you show that clearly, because she will test you throughout the relationship to see if this is indeed the case. If you show that, it'll imply a lower SMV, even if it isn't actually the case. This is why we see so many situations of even Chads getting cheated on. It's because they've gotten emotionally attached, they've signaled too much security. But this rarely ends up occurring when there really is a significant discrepancy in SMV, usually because without the man even having to try, he simply doesn't get overly emotionally attached, and it's clear that he has other options as well, and the female notices this, and thus there's a little bit of insecurity on her end. And that's enough to keep it in a very healthy state. That in itself is sufficient. And so I like to call it discrepancy theory, and that discrepancy could be literal or just implied, insinuated, because it works both ways, vice versa. It could be the case where you're implying a lower SMV or a higher SMV, regardless of what your actual stats are. What matters is what she's perceiving, and your behavior goes into your actual looks as well. This all comes together for her overall perception of you. Now, how we would calculate that, who knows? Like whether it's, 90%, 10%, who knows? But the point I'm trying to make is that it's not specifically dead set on sub-8. That's not how it works. And in fact, even a Chad who is 8, if he's dating a Stacy, he's going to encounter precisely the same issues even though he is an 8. Even though he is an 8. That's why sub-8 theory is a little bit of a misleading name for it, because then people are quick to dismiss it and they don't acknowledge the truth behind it and the nuance of it, because what really matters is the discrepancy to keep that desire. In an evolutionary sense, if she genuinely believes that she is shooting way above her genetic value, that's going to keep her desire very high. And so even if physically and actually your SMV really is higher, maybe you are an 8, but you get overly emotionally attached, even that small percentage of the equation that is your behavior could be sufficient to offset it, even if you're an 8 and she's like a 6.5, to potentially stir up trouble in paradise. So, yeah, I just wanted to make this video because this was just something that was on my mind. Because people are too quick to dismiss sub-8 theory and not acknowledge the actual nuance of it. And I wanted to clarify that there is truth to it. But when you look at it literally, when you look at it like sub-8, which of course all autistic people are going to do, it seems like immediately not true. And then people who are overly black-pilled and likely don't have much experience on the field, don't have experience with long-term relationships, and they simply just don't have that data, they can't even imagine a world where a woman like truly desires them, raw, genuine, primal desire, without being sub-8. But that really does happen. Like, that's a real thing. I mean, look, I can even say, all right, don't get on my back saying like, oh, you're just saying like it's, I know a guy, a fat guy who has a wife who genuinely, no, guys, actually, like, it does happen, it does occur, but it usually will occur when there's a discrepancy in overall SMV. And it's that discrepancy that matters. And the larger discrepancy, at least perceived discrepancy, again, it might not always be actual discrepancy, but perceived discrepancy, that's what's going to maintain that desire. Because even without you being strategic, just naturally, if there's a discrepancy in SMV, there's a little sense of insecurity on her end. So yeah, sub-8 theory is a real thing. It's just a little bit misunderstood because of the precise naming of it. Like, yes, obviously we all understand settling, the word settling, how like a woman could get into a relationship and the desire just isn't really there. And that's what sub-8 theory is really trying to say. That's what sub-8 theory is really trying to articulate. Like, yes, you can, but her true primal desire might not be ideal. She's going to be thinking about the men she sees on social media, and that's obviously not ideal if you're a man. That is extremely repulsive to even think about. I don't know about you guys, but if I was seeing a girl and taking her seriously, and on social media I saw she liked a celebrity post or said anything about a celebrity, it's like immensely disgusting and repulsive. And of course you could call that insecure, but I think that just comes with being a man. that just comes with, from an evolutionary sense, like something like infidelity is hardwired into our biology, and thus it's also hardwired for the man to be paranoid and like on edge, always, not on edge, that's a bad way to put it, but like be a little bit skeptical, because before there were paternal tests, because evolution hasn't caught up to technology, before there were paternal tests, the man had to be skeptical to ensure he wasn't spending all of his time and energy to dedicate resources to an offspring that biologically was not his genes. So this is why we have this within ourselves. It's not insecurity. It's literally just evolution. And so if you're like that, don't beat yourself up. Don't listen to these fucking cucks on Instagram saying like, oh, you're just being insecure. No. I would much rather be insecure than the opposite. So yeah, I don't know. Can you guys relate to that? Or maybe my testosterone is just a little bit too high. But yeah, that anything like that would immediately repulse me, and I believe that that's true to my biology, and so I'm not going to reject those feelings. Like if I see something like that occur, I'm just out. And if you have options, that's something you have the freedom to do. And honestly, if the desire is high enough, at least during that honeymoon phase, like the first year or so, she's not going to try any of that stupid shit. Because usually the reason she'll do it, the whole reason she does it, is to test you. And yeah, like, it's like a test of your value to see if you get reactive. And you shouldn't get reactive, but if you have options and something like that occurs, just don't like reply to any messages, no formal breakup or nothing, just leave, just disappear and move on to the next option. And I think that is the best way to go about it. Now, if you're a more emotional guy, that's going to be a little harder, especially if you have inexperience and you don't have a lot of options. And yeah, it's going to be harder for you. So maybe you have to decide for yourself, do you want to date someone that's closer to your SMV, less discrepancy, but you're going to deal with those kinds of issues? Or you can increase the discrepancy in SMV, shoot down a little farther. Like if you're a 7, maybe you shoot for like a 6 instead of trying to get a 6.5. Then you might just have like a much more enjoyable, healthy relationship, because you're not going to deal with that kind of bullshit so often. And the bigger the discrepancy is, the less of those kinds of bullshit issues you're going to run into. But if the discrepancy is close, you're going to run into those kinds of tests. And as a man, obviously, any kind of shit like that is repulsive, whether it's like her liking a celebrity's post on Instagram, or her dressing in an appropriate way, or just going out in general to the bar with her girls. That's just something that I never have to articulate, but if it ever occurs, hypothetically, if it occurs, I know that I would much rather prefer just leaving, because you have to think of like what's implied when she's doing that. Like, she's testing her market value. If she really liked you a lot, she's not going to try that fucking bullshit. She knows better. It's an unspoken thing, but if she sees you as like a 4 out of 10 desire level instead of a 7 or 8 out of 10 desire level, she's going to take risks like that. And this is the choice you have to make. Do you want to deal with that bullshit? Or do you want to increase the SMV discrepancy and have a healthier relationship? Now, where this gets tricky is when you actually want to have children, because at that point, the genetics really matter. You see, personally, with kids aside, offspring aside, when it comes to just enjoying a relationship, honestly, between you and me, like, looks are not my main priority. I really do care a lot about a good quality person, like good values, good morals, somebody that I could respect, and just pleasant to be around and always respects me. Um, yeah, like I really don't place looks at the top of the hierarchy because personally, you know, I could get turned on the same way with like a 6 as I would, or even like a 5.5 as I would with 6.5 or 7. You know, I would still enjoy it the same way, and then I would appreciate a much healthier relationship. But where this gets tricky is when you're actually deciding to have children, because at that point, looks matter not just for your physical, your self-enjoyment, which I've articulated I don't prioritize, but now it impacts your offspring. Now looks matter on a different level. Now it's not about your personal enjoyment. Now it's about looking out for your future offspring. So at that point, then you might have to come to the choice of, well, maybe now looks are the priority, and consequently, the SMV discrepancy is not going to be that high, and consequently, you're going to deal with some unfortunate things in the relationship. It's just more likely to occur. It's not definitive, of course, but it's more likely that something disgusting and repulsive like that might occur. Like if you're like a very successful man, but you're not a Chad, but because of your success and status, maybe you're able to attain a Stacy. Well, that's probably going to come with some issues later down the road. Not so much during the honeymoon phase, but later down the road, it'll come with some issues. And it's one of those sacrificial kinds of things. Like, you'd be doing it for your offspring's sake. Like, and this is such a nuanced thing that only a neurodivergent, retarded fuck like me would think about. Is there anyone else out there who thinks like this? Like, Jesus fucking Christ, I'm so off the deep end. Because I would never talk like this to my friends or like people I meet in regular life, but I like having this little platform that people listen to, because you could hear these nuanced thoughts that go through my head. Because when you're neurodivergent, you see certain patterns because you look super deep into things. The same way like an autistic person is like, they get super obsessed with a craft. It's the same way you get super obsessed with like one particular idea, and then you keep following that idea and the consequences of that idea, and it makes you think about these types of things that nobody else thinks about. And so yeah, this is like a dilemma you're gonna run into when you decide that you're ready for kids. And this is the video I made kind of recently. It was like choosing the mother of my offspring. It's like, it's such a complicated decision when you understand the ramifications of the discrepancy in SMV. But I'll finish it off on a good note by saying it's not all about actual SMV. You do have a degree of control with the perceived aspect of the SMV. So if you're really tactful and you're really good, you can, even if you get emotionally attached, you can conceal that. And you can even, if you notice things are getting a little bit boring, spice things up, you know? Like leave a headband hanging around someplace you know she's gonna clean. You know, and enable do not disturb when you're out at the bar with your boys, and don't answer till the next morning. You know, there's like tactics you can implement to increase the perceived SMV. Like, it's not 100% all out of your control, all genetics. Of course, we're black-pilled. We know that's the majority, but I think what I'm trying to do a little bit differently in the black pill space is not give you guys cope fuel, but give you guys actual hope fuel, because I know these things are true. I've tested these things myself. I know these things are real. You do have a degree of control. So yeah, I'm not just bullshitting you. This isn't just some cope. You do have a degree of control with it. But I think that about sums it up for today. It's enough people looking at me around here like I'm retarded, because I am.